Backward engineering. Quote, I suspect that in the last 60 years or so, that there has been some backward engineering and the creation of this type of equipment that is not nearly as sophisticated yet as what the apparent visitors have, end quote. Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth astronaut to walk on the moon. There has been an emergence in the last few decades of a renegade group within the military, the petroleum industry and intelligence agencies whose focus is to cover up everything related to UFOs. This conspiratorial group of plotters is commonly referred to as the Cabal, made up of extremists, fundamentalists, xenophobics, racists, and paranoid officers. The Cabal fears and hates extraterrestrials. Without presidential authorization or congressional oversight, the Cabal has commandeered Star Wars weaponry to shoot down UFOs, has taken surviving extraterrestrials prisoners, and has attempted to extract information by force. Another faction of humans, called the Controllers, work with what they believe are malevolent ETs. The two groups are collectively called the Military-Industrial Extraterrestrial Complex, that's MIEC. This is a convoluted jar of exopolitical and geopolitical agendas. As we'll see in this chapter, they have become something of a breakaway civilization today because of the mind-boggling technology the Controllers have backward engineered for decades. The process of taking a finished product and discovering new technological principles for dismantling, then reassembling it, is called reverse or backward engineering. The goal is to reproduce and duplicate the results. Reverse engineering is usually undertaken in order to redesign any system for better maintainability, or, as with alien spacecraft, to produce a copy of a system without access to the design from which it was originally produced. Most frequently, backward engineering is involved in the study of a mechanical device, electronic component, or software program. It involves taking apart and analyzing its workings in detail in order to make a new device or program that does the same thing without using or duplicating the original. The study of the object, whether a human-made or ET device, is considered through analysis of its structure, function, and operation. In the USA, the government behind the government plays a big role in keeping UFO information secret worldwide. Of course, they are not the only nefarious group doing this, as the Russians, British, and other developed countries also have black operations. Their primary motive for top secrecy is to backward engineer the most advanced technology acquired from ETs to be used for their mutual defense systems. Backward engineered technology is promoted within the U.S. military-industrial complex, the MIC, which is composed of our nation's armed forces, its suppliers of weapon systems, supply producers, service operators, and its civil government. Apart from weapons development, another motivation for secrecy of an ET presence on Earth is the perceived damage it would cause to the established order of society, especially the collapse of religious institutions. The third reason is because very extreme measures have been taken to keep this secrecy, including undermining the Constitution, murdering the whistleblowers, and outright fraud, to name a few. Open disclosure would reveal many crimes. The study of craft debris has been assigned an above top secret classification ever since the extraterrestrial disk crashed in New Mexico in 1947. An even earlier discovery of a UFO craft in 1941 in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, was the first known retrieval of a UFO craft in the USA. The government knew it had something big on its hands, but it would take decades to figure out just what it was. The recovered items initiated the first reverse engineering work, but it did not create a unified intelligence effort to exploit possible technological gains, except for some uses within the Manhattan Project. That real work and the method for keeping it secret would be launched in a matter of months. The day after Roswell. The extraordinary recovery of a fallen airborne object in the desert of central New Mexico between July 4th and July 16th, 1947, caused the Chief of Staff of the Army's Air Force, quote, Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, end quote, Scientific and Technological Branch, Counterintelligence Directorate to initiate a thorough investigation. The Special Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit had been formed in response to two crashes in the Los Angeles area in late February 1942, after the infamous Battle of Los Angeles. The draft summary for the Roswell report begins, quote, at 23:32 hours MST, 3 July 1947, radar stations in East Texas and White Sands Proving Ground, New Mexico, tracked two unidentified aircraft until they both dropped off radar. Two crash sites have been located close to the WSPG. Site LZ-1 was located at the ranch near Corona, approximately 75 miles northwest of the town of Roswell. Site LZ-2 is located approximately 20 miles southeast of the town of Sirocco at latitude 30, 40, 31 and longitude 106, 28, 29, end quote. In fact, there were two UFOs that collided in midair during an intense electrical storm, although the dates and exact crash locations vary slightly. One crash contained orange ETs, and the other was flown by the Greys. One crash landed near Corona, northwest of Roswell, while the other crashed onto the plains of St. Augustine near Shaw Mountain, about 200 kilometers to the west. Army intelligence units secured both sites and removed the craft and the ET crews, who were all dead except one. In 1957, the U.S. Air Force published a highly classified report that detailed in depth this crash site in New Mexico. The report lists one crash site for the Roswell craft, but two different debris fields, one site being where part of the craft crashed north of Roswell, and the second being southeast of Corona. Both of these debris fields resulted from the same craft. The second disk crash site was listed as Shaw Mountain, but not recovered until 1949. Alien bodies were recovered at both crash sites. The U.S. Air Force theorized that the two crafts collided in midair north of Roswell. Other speculation suggests that the crafts were brought down accidentally by high-powered military radars, or as the result of an electrical storm, or possibly a combination of both. The Roswell crash was headline news on July 8, 1947, when the Roswell Daily Record newspaper published a front-page article, quote, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region, end quote. The Roswell Army Airfield, RAAF, also issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Bomb Group had recovered a crashed flying disc from a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. However, the news was short-lived. The next day, the Roswell Daily Record cover story dramatically changed. Quote, General Ramsey says disc is weather balloon, end quote. The article stated, quote, an examination by the Army revealed last night that a mysterious object found on a lonely New Mexico ranch was a harmless, high-altitude weather balloon, end quote. The infamous Roswell downed flying disc account, accurately reported immediately by the local newspaper, was debunked the following day by the same paper's publication of a press release issued by General Ramey at the Roswell Army Airfield, saying it was a weather balloon. This was certainly a whitewash, being nothing but a cover-up story to discredit the initial press story. The official military story would change once again exactly 50 years later when the Air Force stated that the alleged weather balloon was actually Project Mogul balloon, and then added the bogus detail about crash test dummies being the explanation for the bodies recovered. All the military cover stories about Roswell are ridiculous. After all, if the debris originally originated from a weather balloon test, why was there no recovery or search operation underway until the rancher, Mac Brazel, reported the debris to Sheriff Wilcox 4 days after the find? There are dozens of civilians and top officials who since have come forward with what they know about Roswell, many on their deathbeds for fear of reprisals. The intelligence chief at Roswell, Major Jesse Marcel, and the first people to investigate sheep rancher Mac Brazel's find, confirmed in a number of interviews 30 years later that the crash debris had highly anomalous properties and was, quote, not of this earth, end quote. Former Roswell Base Public Information Officer Lieutenant Walter Haught's deathbed sealed affidavit was later published. In it, he confesses to seeing the spacecraft and bodies in Base Hangar 84P3. He states that the mysterious weather balloon press release was General Ramey's idea to divert media and public attention away from the closer and more important alien bodies in the crash site. Even General Ramey's wife told reporters a decade later that her husband was embarrassed about having to lie about the weather balloon. The rancher's son, Bill Brazel, had collected and showed several people a piece of metallic-looking debris with memory properties. All who saw it described it as very strong. It resembled a smooth fabric like silk or satin, and strangely unfolded itself back to its original shape after being crumpled up. This amazing metallic fabric-like material with memory was not only very strong, but a person could blow through the fabric. It certainly was not balloon material. When taken together with the testimony of top officials, the evidence clearly points to an actual flying saucer crash with extraterrestrial pilots. As astonishing as this conclusion might seem to many. The debris from the primary field of the 1947 crash near Roswell, New Mexico, was called ULAT1. That's unidentified lenticular aerodyne technology. And it excited metallurgists with its unheard of tensile and shear strength metals. Some of the pieces of metal were kept by officers and exhibited to others. The thin metal could be crumpled into a ball, but would snap back into its original shape. It could not be torn. The fusion nuclear engine recovered from Roswell used heavy water and deuterium with an oddly arranged series of coils, magnets, and electrodes. Back then, the engine was called neutronic because it was discovered to run by nuclear fusion, and descriptions of it resembled the cold fusion studies of today. General Arthur Exon was commanding officer of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the time of the Roswell crash. Dispatched immediately, he flew over and saw football field size burn impact area heavily guarded by military personnel at the crash site. When General Exon was first interviewed, he flatly stated that, quote, Roswell was the recovery of a craft from space, end quote. Among other things, he confirmed the existence of 2 main crash sites. Exon also said he heard that bodies were recovered and confirmed the debris was highly anomalous based on testing done by labs at Wright-Patterson. Exon added that he was aware of other crash recoveries that occurred while he was CO at Wright-Patterson. There were scattered metal debris and radiation detected at the site. Large quantities of crashed debris were hauled away in trucks bound for Wright-Patterson. General Exon also testified that he received a call from General Clements McMullen following the crash at Roswell, New Mexico in July 1947. McMullen's instructions to General Ramey, according to Exon, were to concoct a cover story and to, quote, get the press off our back, end quote. Nazi UFO research. Before the end of the World War II, even as far back as the 1930s, scientists of the Third Reich had acquired and were backward engineering a hyperdimensional torsion-based technology they called the Bell. Developed at a secret base in what is today the Czech Republic, it was Nazi Germany's most highly classified and radically advanced secret weapons research project. The Bell was classified uniquely within the Third Reich, an even higher top secret classification than their atomic bomb project. The Nazis regarded the Bell as a gateway technology to seemingly unlimited expansion of human brain potential, leading to technological power and superiority. The Nazis investigated the potential application of this torsion-based technology as a means to tap into zero-point energy, which scientists described as the energy of the physical medium of space-time itself. The Bell was also studied as a means to manipulate gravity, to be used as an advanced prototypical field propulsion technology. Because of the demented Nazi mentality, their scientists were also looking into the means for the ultimate, potentially planet-busting weapon. The conceptual key to the achievement of all these effects was the manipulation of rotating magnetic fields by means of the counter-rotation of plasma within the device itself. A culture of secrecy is systemic within the military and government, both in Nazi Germany and in the United States today. Many subjects of lesser importance than UFOs are also held secret. The military has an iron-fisted control and flatly insists that secrets must be kept. After the war, many Nazi scientists were secretly brought to America under the auspices of Project Paperclip, as described earlier. In the employment of the U.S. Secret Weapons Department, the Paperclip scientists continued their most highly classified research that characterized the Bell and other operations. They worked to understand all three avenues of its application: free energy, field propulsion, and the ultimate doomsday weapon. Dr. Hermann Oberth, who pioneered rocket design for the Third Reich during World War II, and later the advanced rocket technology for the American manned space launches, cryptically stated, quote, "We cannot take the credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped," end quote. When asked by whom, he replied, quote, "The people of other worlds," end quote. Reverse engineering Roswell crafts. Within months of the Roswell UFO crash, the Army Air Corps became the Air Force. The National Security Act was passed, setting up the National Security Administration, the NSA, partly to deal with the extraordinary secrecy authorities felt UFOs required. During this time, the CIA was also created, as described earlier. Retired U.S. Army Colonel Philip J. Corso claims he helped head a project to reverse engineer and seed all the fantastic recovered extraterrestrial technology into American industry. In his book, The Day After Roswell, Corso summarizes all the backward engineered products gathered from the 1940s downed spacecrafts recovered in the USA. Number one, image intensifiers, which ultimately became night vision. 2. Infrared sight contact lenses, able to detect waves or particles beyond the visible spectrum of light. 3. Super tenacity fibers or super strong fiber cloth lasers. 4. Molecular alignment metallic alloys. 5. Integrated circuits and micro miniaturization of logic boards. 6. HARP, High Altitude Research Program. 7. Project Horizon Moon Base. 8. Portable atomic generators in the form of an ion propulsion drive. 9. Irradiated food. 10. Third brain guidance systems, that is, extraterrestrial biological entity EBE headbands. 11. Hydrogen atom particle beams used in the Star Wars anti-missile energy weapons. 12. Depleted uranium artillery shells. And 13. Electromagnetic propulsion systems. Other commonly reported reverse-engineered ET artifacts, claimed by Corso and others, indirectly led to the development of transistors, Kevlar and Mylar material, microwave ovens, fiber optics, light-emitting diodes, that's LED, superconductivity, the integrated computer chip, accelerated particle beam devices, and even Velcro. Although the timing is interesting, the story of a Swiss man who invented Velcro by the inspiration of pulling a burr from his dog's fur in 1948 is incorrect. The Greys were seen utilizing Velcro on their jumpsuit uniforms when the first Roswell bodies were recovered in 1947. They were also using a kind of headdress that interfaced directly between the brain of the gray pilots and the craft's control mechanisms. Our scientists pioneered a mental expansion process called the gateway treatment, which, quote, allows utilization of a vastly increased percentage of the brain in order for humans to mentally engage the extraterrestrials in full telepathic mental exchange, end quote. The gateway treatment involves, quote, a way of opening the brain up, a way to stimulate the neurons. It allows billions of synapses to form, end quote. In 1947, according to Corso, a covert government group called Majestic 12 was assembled under the leadership of the first director of Central Intelligence, Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkotter. Among its tasks was to collect all information on extraterrestrial craft. Corso says the U.S. administration simultaneously officially discounted the existence of flying saucers to influence public opinion. The U.S. was in possession of a gray ET crash survivor dubbed EBE as the acronym for Extraterrestrial Biological Entity from 1948 until the being died in 1953. Government scientists first communicated with it using pictographs. Corso further relates that the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, or Star Wars, was meant to achieve the capability of killing the electronic guided systems of incoming enemy warheads and disabling enemy spacecraft, including those of extraterrestrial origin. Practical applications. The U.S. military and its subcontractors have been working on extraterrestrial anti-gravity disk prototypes for decades. These prototypes are based on the extraterrestrial crafts that can traverse the galaxy by manipulating space and time to pull their destination towards them. Time is reduced to zero, and acceleration is increased to infinity. The military is also experimenting on pilots to train them to use their minds to guide advanced aircraft. Government scientists found that, quote, some UFOs are living conveyances and can divide and reform, end quote. These living conveyances are apparently also responsive to thought commands. The Aurora SR-33A is an already developed space plane which operates out of Area 51. The Aurora runs on liquid methane and has an anti-gravity device on board. It carries an electromagnetic pulse weapon system which can knock out tracking radar. The Aurora can travel to the covert bases on the Moon and Mars. The stealth planes the public sees at air shows do not have the capacity to leave the atmosphere, but other generations of stealth aircraft can travel into outer space. The Department of Energy is allowed the first opportunity to acquire any back-engineered items once completed by its aerospace partners. Because it controls all of the national laboratories, the DOE has immense scientific capabilities. Unfortunately, non-polluting free energy has never been released by any DOE program. Ever since the first nuclear explosion in nearby White Sands during the Manhattan Project tests in the 1940s, the whole region became a UFO hotspot. The Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico is located a few hundred kilometers between where the twin Roswell saucer crashes were recovered. Yet the Department of Energy has nothing to say on UFOs, nor does the Federal Aviation Administration, which sends all of its reports to a private civilian organization called Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Science Studies, funded by billionaire Bob Bigelow. The FAA, much like the U.S. Air Force, has no interest in UFOs and was happy to pass the report to Bigelow and have the matter go away. Why such facile dismissal? No merit in UFO studies is their official cover story, but in reality, the Department of Energy and the Air Force are extremely interested in acquiring back-engineered technology. In the early years, many raw items were taken to the Bell Labs and back-engineered to find a practical military application or commercial use for the many recovered items. Of course, the golden goose was anti-gravity, grafting free energy from the atmosphere and developing the technology of interdimensional spacecraft. Such crafts would also have the ability to tap into the space-time continuum and essentially be time machines. The space-time continuum is a mathematical model that combines space and time into a single construct. This is usually explained with a model where space is three-dimensional and time has the role of the fourth dimension. We'll get into space and time travel in an upcoming chapter. As for practical applications, Theodore Maiman at Hughes Research Laboratories demonstrated the first working laser in May 1960. More recently, lasers have become a multi-billion-dollar industry. The most widespread use of lasers is in optical storage devices, such as compact discs and DVD players, in which the laser, sometimes only a few millimeters in size, scans the surface of the disc. Other common applications of lasers are barcode readers, laser printers, and laser pointers. Lasers are used by the military for range finding, target identification, and illumination for weapons delivery. Lasers are used in medicine for internal surgery and cosmetic applications. The top priority for backward engineering was to keep a military and intelligence edge on our perceived enemies, namely the Soviets during the Cold War. It would be nearly impossible to think this technology would not be thoroughly examined. The potential of learning from alien crafts is astonishing. Not attempting to reverse engineer this new technology would be unthinkable. But what should be made public and when? For high technology discoveries, the secrets would last for decades. But for the sake of science and the advancement of technology, and for the positive growth of civilization, disclosure is imperative.